June 5, 1943. Atlantic Ocean. Commander Daniel Gallery's hunter-killer group cut through gray waters, hunting an enemy that had terrorized Allied convoys for years. Until that spring, U-boat detection rates had languished below 10%. Sonar operators strained at their stations, knowing that every missed contact meant more merchant ships lost, more supplies denied to Britain. But aboard USS Guadalcanal, something had changed. A new device, the AN-CRT-1 sonobuoy, hung ready in the aircraft hangar. Small enough to be dropped from patrol planes, sophisticated enough to hear what submarines thought was silence. The Navy had deployed these listening devices in geometric patterns across vast ocean expanses, creating invisible nets of sound. Within weeks, detection rates would triple. Within months, the technology would migrate to the Pacific, where Japanese submarines operated with even greater stealth. The geometry of war was about to shift decisively. This is the story of how mathematics and technology cornered an underwater enemy. The roar of diesel engines echoed across the North Atlantic on March 12, 1943. USS Bogue, one of the Navy's new escort carriers, steamed in wide circles while her TBF Avenger aircraft searched the gray waters below. In the operations room, officers studied patrol reports with mounting frustration. German U-boats had sunk over 600,000 tons of Allied shipping in the previous month alone. Detection remained the critical problem. Commander William D. Irwin, leading one of the Navy's experimental hunter-killer groups, understood the mathematics of failure. Traditional sonar worked only at close range. Radar could not penetrate water. Visual searches covered tiny fractions of ocean. His group's detection rate, the percentage of known submarine contacts that resulted in successful attacks, stood at 8%. For every submarine found, 11 escaped. The German Kriegsmarine had deployed over 200 U-boats into the Atlantic. Type 7 and Type 9 submarines operated in wolf packs, coordinating attacks through radio messages decoded by German intelligence. They struck at night, surfaced to recharge batteries during day, and vanished beneath the waves when Allied aircraft approached. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commanding U-boat operations, had refined these tactics through years of combat. His submarines needed only to sink ships faster than American shipyards could build them. But in laboratories across the United States, engineers were developing a solution. The National Defense Research Committee had funded development of an acoustic listening device that could be airdropped and would radio submarine sounds back to searching aircraft. The device, designated AN-CRT-1, represented a fundamental shift in anti-submarine warfare. Instead of searching for submarines, aircraft would deploy listening posts across vast areas. The ocean itself would become a detection grid. Lieutenant Commander John S. McCain, Jr., serving in the Bureau of Aeronautics, had pushed for rapid development of these sonobuoys. In a memo dated January 15, 1943, he wrote, "We must extend our acoustic search capability beyond the range of ship-based sonar. Air-dropped listening devices offer the only practical solution." His recommendation emphasized deploying sonobuoys in geometric patterns, overlapping fields of detection that would eliminate gaps where submarines could hide. The first operational test occurred on May 7, 1943. A TBF Avenger from USS Bogue dropped 12 sonobuoys in a line spacing of 2 miles. The devices activated on water contact, their hydrophones listening for the distinctive sounds of submarine machinery. Within 15 minutes, one sonobuoy detected propeller noise. The Avenger's crew tracked the signal, dropping depth charges that forced U-231 to surface. Destroyers completed the kill. One successful detection meant nothing by itself. But when Commander Irwin reviewed the tactical reports, he recognized the implications. The sonobuoy had functioned perfectly at ranges where ship sonar was useless. Multiple devices could be deployed quickly. Aircraft could service large areas. The question was whether this success could be replicated and scaled. By late May, hunter-killer groups had received production sonobuoys and tactical doctrine for their deployment. The Navy's instructions specified barrier patrols, where aircraft would lay sonobuoy lines across suspected U-boat transit routes. Each device operated for 30 minutes before its battery expired. But 30 minutes was enough time to detect, track, and attack a submarine that had been effectively invisible before. The statistics from June operations revealed the breakthrough. USS Guadalcanal's hunter-killer group, using sonobuoys extensively, achieved a 41% detection rate, 5 times the previous average. Other groups reported similar improvements. The technology worked. Now the question became, could this same approach corner Japanese submarines in the Pacific? Inside the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington, D.C., on July 2, 1943, engineers gathered around the disassembled components of an AN-CRT-1 sonobuoy. Dr. Harold Saxton Burris, the device's principal designer, explained its operation to visiting Navy officers. The sonobuoy consisted of a hydrophone suspended beneath a floating antenna. When the device hit water, a salt plug dissolved, activating the battery. The hydrophone picked up underwater sounds and transmitted them via radio at 30 MHz frequency to the searching aircraft. The device weighed 31 pounds. It measured 4 feet long and 6 inches in diameter. Production cost? $47 per unit. These numbers mattered because operational doctrine required deploying sonobuoys by the hundreds. A single barrier patrol might drop 24 devices. Sustained operations demanded thousands of units monthly. The Western Electric Company had won the production contract in March. Their manufacturing facility in Kansas City, Missouri, began producing sonobuoys at a rate of 500 units per month by June. By August, production reached 1,200 monthly. By October, 3,000. The scale of American industrial capacity was transforming tactical innovation into operational reality. Each sonobuoy contained a hydrophone sensitive enough to detect submarine machinery at ranges up to 6,000 yards under favorable conditions. The device transmitted signals that aircraft radio operators could hear through headphones. Submarine noises, diesel engines, electric motors, propellers, even machinery sounds from inside the hull created distinctive audio signatures. Experienced operators learned to distinguish submarine contacts from biological sounds or surface ships. The tactical geometry mattered as much as the technology. Commander Operations Research Group Captain Philip M. Morse, a physicist assigned to anti-submarine warfare analysis, calculated optimal sonobuoy spacing. His mathematical models indicated that devices placed 2 miles apart would create overlapping detection zones with minimal gaps. Submarines attempting to transit these barriers would almost certainly be heard by at least one sonobuoy. The concept resembled minefields but used sound instead of explosives. An aircraft could deploy a barrier line in minutes. The sonobuoys would listen silently while the aircraft flew a patrol pattern overhead. When a sonobuoy detected submarine noises, the aircraft would close in for attack. Even if the submarine dove deep or changed course, its movements would trigger additional sonobuoys, revealing its location and direction. Testing revealed remarkable effectiveness. In exercises conducted off the Virginia coast in August, submarined USS Maccabi attempted to penetrate sonobuoy barriers without being detected. In 12 attempts, the submarine was detected 11 times, a 92% success rate. The single failure occurred when a sonobuoy malfunctioned. The mathematics of detection had shifted decisively in favor of the hunters. But technology alone did not guarantee success. Crews needed training. Tactical doctrine required refinement. Logistics demanded expansion. And most critically, the war demanded results. German U-boats continued sinking Allied ships. Japanese submarines threatened Pacific supply lines. The sonobuoy offered a solution, but only if deployed effectively across both theaters. Admiral Ernest J. King, Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Fleet, received briefings on sonobuoy operations in September. His directive, issued September 23, 1943, ordered maximum deployment of sonobuoy-equipped aircraft to both Atlantic and Pacific theaters. The message emphasized, "These devices represent our best opportunity to gain decisive advantage in anti-submarine warfare. All resources will be allocated to support their operational use." The stage was set. Technology had been proven, production was accelerating, training was underway. Now combat would test whether America's sonobuoy geometry could truly corner the submarine threat. Tokyo Bay, September 5, 1943. The massive submarine I-400 slipped beneath gray waters, beginning trials of the Imperial Japanese Navy's most ambitious weapon. At 400 feet long, displacing 6,500 tons, this vessel represented Japan's submarine aviation program. The I-400 carried 3 Siren attack aircraft in a watertight hangar. Japan's naval doctrine envisioned these submarines striking American cities and the Panama Canal. But Japan's submarine force faced fundamental problems. Of the 178 submarines operational in 1942, only 105 remained by mid-1943. American anti-submarine forces had sunk 73 boats. Unlike Germany's U-boats, which focused on merchant shipping, Japanese submarines prioritized attacks on warships, a strategy that exposed them to better defended targets while leaving American supply lines relatively secure. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, commanding the Pacific Fleet, understood that Japanese submarines posed a different challenge than U-boats. Japanese boats operated across vast Pacific distances. Their crews were highly trained. Their torpedoes, the Type 95, were superior to American weapons. And Japanese submarine doctrine emphasized stealth above all else. The I-class submarines could remain submerged for extended periods. Their electric motors ran quietly. Their crews practiced rigorous sound discipline. Detection rates in the Pacific stood even lower than Atlantic figures, approximately 5%. For every Japanese submarine found and attacked, 19 escaped detection entirely. American submarine successes against Japanese shipping had convinced many naval officers that submarines were primarily offensive weapons. But Japanese submarines sinking American transports and tankers near Australia proved they remained a defensive threat. In January 1943, submarines sank 4 American cargo ships near Guadalcanal. In March, submarines attacked convoy routes near New Guinea. The threat was real, persistent, and growing. Commander Operations Research Group analyzed Pacific anti-submarine operations and reached a troubling conclusion. The Pacific's vast distances made traditional search methods even less effective than in the Atlantic. Ships could not adequately patrol the enormous areas where submarines operated. Aircraft could not maintain continuous coverage. Japanese submarines exploited these gaps, operating with relative impunity. But the sonobuoy offered a potential solution. If geometric barriers worked in the Atlantic, they might work in the Pacific. The challenge was adapting tactics to different conditions. Pacific waters were deeper and warmer than the Atlantic. Sound propagation varied with temperature. Japanese submarines operated differently than U-boats. Everything would require adjustment. Vice Admiral Charles A. Lockwood, commanding Pacific submarines, provided crucial intelligence from his own submariners' experiences. Japanese anti-submarine efforts were improving but remained less sophisticated than American capabilities. If American submarines could operate successfully despite Japanese countermeasures, Japanese submarines would face even greater challenges against superior American technology. The decision was made at Pacific Fleet Headquarters on October 1, 1943. Hunter-killer groups would deploy to the Pacific with full sonobuoy equipment. Training would emphasize Pacific conditions. Operations would target known Japanese submarine transit routes. The geometry of sound detection would be tested against Japan's underwater fleet. Statistics from the first month of Pacific sonobuoy operations revealed promising results. Detection rates increased from 5% to 17%. Not yet matching Atlantic figures, but a clear improvement. More importantly, Japanese submarines were being forced to alter their operations. Boats that once transited predictable routes now took longer, more circuitous paths. The invisible net was beginning to constrain their movements. The question was whether this constraint could be tightened into a noose. North Atlantic, November 14, 1943. USS Card's TBF Avengers launched into pre-dawn darkness, each aircraft carrying 8 sonobuoys. Their mission: establish a barrier patrol across U-boat transit routes southwest of Iceland. Radio operators tested their receivers while pilots checked navigation. Below, gray water stretched to every horizon. The tactical revolution was underway. Hunter-killer groups had evolved from experimental units into specialized submarine hunters. Each group centered on an escort carrier. Vessels like USS Card, USS Core, and USS Bogue, converted from merchant hulls and commissioned specifically for anti-submarine warfare. These small carriers operated TBF Avengers and F-4F Wildcats. The Avengers carried sonobuoys, depth charges, and acoustic homing torpedoes. The Wildcats provided fighter cover. Lieutenant Richard S. Rogers, flying lead Avenger in Card's morning patrol, followed the prescribed tactical pattern. His aircraft reached the designated patrol line and began dropping sonobuoys at 2-mile intervals. Each device splashed into the water and activated automatically. Within minutes, 12 sonobuoys were operational, creating a listening barrier 24 miles long. Rogers circled overhead, monitoring the sonobuoy frequencies. His radio operator, Petty Officer James Walsh, adjusted the receiver to scan each frequency in sequence. For 15 minutes, nothing but ocean noise. Waves, biologics, distant shipping. Then, on frequency 7, a distinctive rhythmic sound. Machinery, propellers, submarine. Walsh marked the position. Rogers banked toward the contact. 2 more sonobuoys confirmed the direction. The submarine was moving southeast at approximately 8 knots. Rogers radioed Card, vectoring destroyer escorts toward the contact while he prepared his own attack. The geometry of sound had trapped a U-boat. The submarine, U-584, attempted to dive deeper and change course. But each maneuver triggered another sonobuoy. The invisible net was inescapable. Rogers dropped depth charges in a pattern calculated to bracket the submarine's probable position. Destroyers arrived and continued the attack. 40 minutes after the initial detection, U-584 surfaced, heavily damaged. The crew abandoned ship. The sonobuoys had guided every step of the attack. This pattern repeated across the Atlantic. In November alone, sonobuoy-equipped hunter-killer groups sank 13 U-boats. December brought 17 more kills. The statistics were undeniable. Groups using sonobuoys achieved detection rates averaging 38%. Groups without sonobuoys averaged 12%. The technology had proven itself in combat. Admiral Donitz recognized the threat. German naval intelligence intercepted radio traffic describing sonobuoy operations. Technical analysis teams examined a recovered device. But understanding the technology did not provide a solution. U-boats could not hide from sound. Attempts to reduce noise helped marginally but could not eliminate detection. The acoustic geometry favored the hunters. German submarine losses accelerated through winter. Production could not keep pace. Experienced crews were being killed faster than training could replace them. The U-boat offensive, which had nearly severed Britain's Atlantic lifeline in 1942, was collapsing under the weight of technological and tactical superiority. The Western Electric Factory in Kansas City increased sonobuoy production to 5,000 units monthly by January 1944. Other contractors joined production. Monthly output reached 8,000 units by March. The scale of deployment matched the scale of American industrial capacity. For every U-boat at sea, hundreds of sonobuoys waited to detect it. But the most significant development was not in the Atlantic. By early 1944, proven tactics and adequate equipment were being transferred to the Pacific theater. Japanese submarines, which had operated with relative freedom for 2 years, would soon face the same acoustic nets that had destroyed the U-boat threat. The geometry was expanding. The noose was tightening. Pearl Harbor, February 9, 1944. Commander Martin J. Mike Hoffman briefed aircrew from escort carrier USS Manila Bay on Pacific sonobuoy operations. Maps showed Japanese submarine patrol zones east of the Philippines and near the Marianas. Intelligence indicated approximately 60 Japanese submarines were operational. Detection remained the critical challenge. Pacific conditions differed significantly from the Atlantic. Water temperature variations created thermal layers that affected sound propagation. Greater depths meant submarines could dive deeper. Vast distances meant fewer ships to support operations. Everything required adaptation. The first Pacific sonobuoy barriers were established in March near Japanese shipping lanes. TBF Avengers from USS Nahenta Bay dropped experimental patterns, testing detection ranges in warmer water. Initial results disappointed. Several submarines passed through barriers without detection. The hydrophones picked up more biological noise, schools of fish, whales, shrimp, that masked mechanical sounds. Commander Hoffman worked with acoustic specialists to adjust tactics. Sonobuoys were spaced closer, 1.5 miles instead of 2. Deployment patterns shifted from straight lines to staggered arrays that provided overlapping coverage. Aircraft increased patrol time over barriers. Most importantly, operators learned to distinguish biological sounds from machinery. The adjusted tactics produced results. On March 28, 1944, Avengers from USS Marcus Island detected submarine I-32 using a modified sonobuoy pattern. The submarine was transiting from Truk to the Marianas, following what Japanese doctrine considered a safe route. The sonobuoys heard I-32's electric motors. 2 destroyers prosecuted the contact. I-32 was sunk by depth charges 50 miles from where previous detection methods would have found nothing. April brought more successes. 3 submarines detected, 2 sunk, 1 damaged severely enough to abort its patrol. Detection rates climbed to 21%, still below Atlantic figures, but improving steadily. Japanese submarines were beginning to encounter the same invisible nets that had destroyed U-boats. Vice Admiral Lockwood reviewed the tactical reports with satisfaction. In a message to Pacific Fleet Headquarters dated May 3rd, he noted, "Sonobuoy operations show increasing effectiveness. Japanese submarines are modifying transit routes and patrol patterns in response to perceived threat. This defensive behavior reduces their operational effectiveness even when they successfully evade detection." The psychological dimension mattered. Japanese submarine commanders knew American detection capabilities were improving. They could not determine exactly how. Some boats reported hearing unusual noises before attacks, possibly sonobuoy transmissions. Others simply vanished without explanation. The uncertainty bred caution. Submarines spent more time submerged, reducing their patrol effectiveness. Transit times increased as commanders took circuitous routes to avoid suspected detection zones. Production statistics told the story of American commitment. By June 1944, sonobuoy production reached 12,000 units monthly. Approximately 40% of production went to the Pacific theater. Hunter-killer groups operating from escort carriers, USS Anzio, USS Corregidor, USS Manila Bay, USS Natoma Bay, received priority allocation. The geometry of detection was spreading across the Pacific. Japanese naval intelligence recognized the threat but lacked countermeasures. Technical analysis correctly identified acoustic detection methods. But Japanese industry could not produce comparable equipment at scale. Limited resources were allocated to offensive weapons rather than defensive technology. This strategic choice left Japanese submarines increasingly vulnerable. The I-400 class submarines, Japan's most advanced boats, carried passive sonar systems that could detect surface ships. But these systems provided no warning of sonobuoy deployment. The massive submarines, designed to strike strategic targets, found themselves constrained by tactical detection networks. Their size made them easier to detect. Their mission profiles required long transits through zones increasingly covered by sonobuoy barriers. By summer 1944, the pattern was clear. American sonobuoy technology, proven in the Atlantic and adapted to Pacific conditions, was systematically reducing Japanese submarine effectiveness. The kill rates were increasing. The geometry of sound was reshaping naval warfare in the Pacific, and the noose continued tightening. Kansas City, Missouri, July 12, 1944. The Western Electric Factory operated 3 shifts continuously, producing sonobuoys around the clock. Women workers, many whose husbands or sons served in combat zones, assembled hydrophones with precise hand movements. Quality control inspectors tested each unit. Shipping clerks prepared crates for transport to Navy supply depots. Production reached 15,000 units monthly. The numbers represented more than industrial capacity. They demonstrated strategic commitment. Each sonobuoy cost $47 to manufacture. Monthly production cost approximately $700,000, less than the cost of a single destroyer escort. Yet those sonobuoys enabled detection of submarines that could sink multiple ships worth millions. Commander Malcolm F. Schufel, assigned to the Navy's Bureau of Ordnance, supervised sonobuoy logistics. His office tracked production, distribution, and usage rates across both theaters. The statistics revealed the scale of deployment. Atlantic operations consumed approximately 8,000 sonobuoys monthly. Pacific operations used 5,000. Training and testing required 2,000 more. Total monthly demand, 15,000 units, matching production. But demand was increasing. More escort carriers were entering service. More hunter-killer groups required equipment. Admiral King directed production expansion to 20,000 units monthly by October. Western Electric added machinery. Additional contractors, Raytheon and Bendix, began production. The industrial system responded with characteristic American abundance. Transportation presented its own challenges. Sonobuoys required careful handling. Salt plugs that activated the batteries could dissolve prematurely if exposed to moisture. The devices needed protective packaging. Shipping from Kansas City to forward bases in the Pacific required coordination with cargo priorities. Commander Schofel's logistics staff developed procedures for expedited shipment, ensuring sonobuoys received priority loading on supply vessels. At forward operating bases, Navy ordnance specialists managed inventory. USS Manila Bay's supply officer, Lieutenant Samuel Graves, maintained records showing sonobuoy usage patterns. His logs indicated that TBF Avengers typically expended 8 to 12 sonobuoys per patrol mission. With 4 aircraft conducting 2 missions daily, the carrier used approximately 100 sonobuoys per day during active operations. Multiply by multiple carriers, and the consumption rate explained the production requirements. The logistics extended beyond manufacturing. Sonobuoys required radio frequencies. The Navy allocated 30 MHz band channels specifically for sonobuoy operations. But frequency management became complex as more devices operated simultaneously. Technical modifications allowed sonobuoys to operate on multiple frequencies, reducing conflicts. Engineering improvements extended battery life from 30 to 40 minutes, increasing effectiveness per unit. Quality control maintained rigorous standards. Every sonobuoy underwent testing before shipment. Failure rates remained below 2%, remarkable for a device exposed to harsh maritime conditions. The Western Electric Quality Control Manager, Susan Morrison, insisted on systematic testing procedures. Her methods ensured that sonobuoys would function reliably when deployed in combat. The human dimension of production mattered as much as the numbers. Factory workers understood their product's importance. Many had relatives serving in the Pacific or Atlantic. They knew sonobuoys saved American lives by detecting submarines before submarines detected Allied ships. This knowledge motivated quality work and productivity improvements. By August 1944, cumulative sonobuoy production exceeded 150,000 units. Approximately 90,000 had been deployed operationally. 60,000 remained in inventory or were being shipped to forward areas. The scale of production reflected America's industrial capacity. No other nation could match this combination of technological sophistication and manufacturing volume. German attempts to develop similar devices remained limited. Japanese efforts were virtually non-existent. Both enemies lacked the industrial capacity, technical expertise, and logistical systems required for large-scale production. This asymmetry, American abundance versus Axis scarcity, characterized the broader war. Technology mattered. Tactics mattered. But ultimately, industrial capacity determined outcomes. The sonobuoy production statistics represented a simple truth. America could build detection devices faster than enemies could build submarines. The geometry of naval warfare tilted inexorably toward the side with superior resources. And those resources were being deployed systematically to corner submarine threats in both Atlantic and Pacific waters. The industrial machine had engaged. The tactical innovation had proven itself. Now combat would demonstrate the consequences of this combination. Philippine Sea, October 17, 1944. Submarine I-26 departed Kure Naval Base for patrol near the Marianas. Commander Kusaka Minoru commanded a crew of 100 sailors aboard the Type B submarine. Their mission: interdict American supply lines supporting the invasion of the Philippines. Intelligence indicated heavy ship traffic. The patrol promised opportunity. But I-26 entered an ocean transformed by technology. American hunter-killer groups had established rotating patrol zones across major transit routes. Sonobuoy barriers covered key choke points. The invisible acoustic nets had been deployed systematically across thousands of square miles. Commander Kusaka did not know the extent of American detection capabilities. He would discover them through bitter experience. On October 23, I-26 approached its patrol zone. The submarine traveled submerged during daylight, surfaced at night to recharge batteries and search for targets. Standard doctrine, proven tactics. But at 0300 hours on October 24th, as I-26 surfaced under darkness, a TBF Avenger from USS Petroff Bay was conducting a routine sonobuoy deployment 30 miles away. The Avenger's crew, pilot Lieutenant Robert Chen, radio operator Petty Officer Daniel Brooks, and bombardier seaman Thomas Miller, had launched at 0200 for a barrier patrol. They dropped 16 sonobuoys in a staggered pattern, creating overlapping detection zones. Brooks monitored the frequencies. At 0315, he heard diesel engines, submarine surfacing. Chen circled toward the contact, while Brooks refined the position using multiple sonobuoys. The geometry worked perfectly. 3 devices triangulated I-26's location with precision. Chen could not attack immediately. Submarine surfaced could maneuver quickly, but he radioed the contact to nearby destroyers. Then he waited for I-26 to dive. Commander Kusaka heard the aircraft engines and ordered an emergency dive. His crew responded with practiced efficiency. I-26 submerged and turned sharply, changing course to evade. But the geometry had already trapped them. The submerging submarine triggered 4 more sonobuoys. Brooks called continuous position updates. destroyers USS Lawrence C. Taylor and USS Melvin R. Nauman converged on the contact. The destroyers, prosecuted methodically, depth charges exploded in calculated patterns, guided by continuous sonobuoy updates. I-26 dove deeper and attempted violent maneuvers. Nothing helped. The sonobuoys heard everything. After 90 minutes of sustained attack, I-26 surfaced, listing heavily. The crew abandoned ship. Commander Kusaka went down with his boat. This pattern repeated across the Pacific throughout late 1944. Japanese submarines encountered detection they could not evade. Some boats reached their patrol zones but found no targets. American convoys had been rerouted based on intelligence about submarine positions. Other submarines were detected during transit and never reached patrol areas. A few boats successfully evaded the sonobuoy nets through luck or careful navigation. But the overall trend was clear. Japanese submarine effectiveness was declining sharply. Admiral Nimitz received briefings showing the statistics. In August, American forces had detected 14 Japanese submarines and sunk 6. In September, 18 detected, 9 sunk. In October, 23 detected, 12 sunk. Detection rates had reached 37%. More significantly, the average duration of Japanese submarine patrols had decreased. Boats that remained at sea longer faced higher detection probability. Commanders shortened patrols to reduce risk, which reduced their operational effectiveness. Japanese Naval Command recognized the crisis. In a message intercepted by American intelligence and decrypted through magic signals intelligence, Admiral Toyota Sumu acknowledged, "Submarine losses exceed replacement capacity. Enemy detection capabilities have improved significantly. New operational doctrine required immediately." But doctrine could not overcome technology. Japanese submarines lacked effective countermeasures. Attempts to develop acoustic decoys failed due to limited resources and technical challenges. Proposals to equip submarines with anti-aircraft weapons addressed the wrong problem. Sonobuoys detected boats before aircraft came within visual range. The geometry had trapped Japanese submarines in an impossible tactical situation. By November, Japanese submarine force strength had declined from approximately 60 operational boats to 45. Losses exceeded new construction. Experienced crews were killed faster than training could replace them. The pattern mirrored the Atlantic U-boat collapse exactly. The acoustic nets had achieved their purpose. Japanese submarines, once a serious threat to American operations, were being systematically eliminated. The cornering had become a slaughter. Pacific Fleet Intelligence Center, Pearl Harbor, December 4, 1944. Commander Edwin T. Layton studied decrypted Japanese naval messages with particular attention. Recent intercepts indicated Japanese submarine command was attempting desperate tactical adjustments. The messages revealed both the extent of Japanese awareness and the limitations of their response. American signals intelligence, codenamed MAGIC, provided remarkable insight into enemy thinking. Decrypted messages showed Japanese admirals understood that American detection capabilities had improved dramatically. They correctly attributed increased losses to acoustic detection methods, but they could not determine the specific technology or develop effective countermeasures. One message, sent November 29th from Combined Fleet Headquarters to submarine commanders, ordered, "All boats will maintain silent running when within 500 miles of enemy operating areas. Surface operations restricted to absolute necessity. Patrol durations reduced to minimize exposure." These defensive measures acknowledged the threat but provided no solution. Commander Layton shared the intelligence with anti-submarine warfare planners. The Japanese response actually helped American operations. Submarines maintaining silent running moved more slowly, making them easier to track once detected. Reduced patrol durations meant fewer submarines at sea. Restricted surface operations forced boats to rely entirely on submerged operations, which limited their search capabilities and battery life. The intelligence also revealed Japanese confusion about sonobuoy deployment methods. Some Japanese officers believed American ships were deploying the devices. Others speculated about submarine-deployed sensors. Few recognized that aircraft were dropping hundreds of listening devices across vast areas. This confusion prevented effective countermeasures. Rear Admiral Thomas C. Kinkaid, commanding 7th Fleet, used intelligence about Japanese submarine movements to position hunter-killer groups more effectively. When magic intercepts revealed a submarine departing truck for operations near Ulithi, escort carrier USS Anzio deployed to the suspected transit route. The submarine I-38 was detected by sonobuoys on December 8th and sunk by depth charges from destroyers USS Richard M. Rowell and USS Olvert M. Moore. The intelligent sonobuoy combination created an asymmetric advantage. American forces knew approximately where Japanese submarines would operate. Sonobuoys provided tactical detection within those areas. Japanese submarines, lacking comparable intelligence and detection technology, operated increasingly blind. Technical intelligence also played a role. When American destroyers sank submarine I-17 on December 3rd, Navy divers recovered documents, including Japanese tactical manuals. These documents revealed Japanese submarine doctrine in detail. American planners studied the manuals and adjusted sonobuoy deployment patterns to match Japanese likely routes and operational procedures. The adaptation worked both ways. American operators learned from experience. Radio operators became more skilled at distinguishing submarine sounds from biological noise. Pilots refined deployment tactics. Tactical analysts developed improved barrier geometries. Each operation generated lessons that improved subsequent operations. By December, sonobuoy effectiveness in the Pacific matched Atlantic performance. Detection rates stabilized around 40%, meaning 4 of every 10 Japanese submarines operating in covered areas were detected and attacked. Given the scale of sonobuoy deployment, covering thousands of square miles of critical ocean, this detection rate represented an operational triumph. Japanese submarines attempted various evasion tactics. Some commanders tried transiting at extreme depths, below sonobuoy effective range. This worked occasionally, but reduced operational flexibility. Deep diving consumed battery power rapidly, forcing submarines to surface more frequently to recharge. Frequent surfacing increased detection probability. Other Japanese commanders attempted to transit through sonobuoy barriers at high speed, minimizing time and detection zones. This tactic also had limited success. High speed created more noise, making detection easier, and the overlapping geometry of sonobuoy deployment meant that even brief transit times often resulted in detection. The most effective Japanese tactic was simple luck. Sonobuoys could not cover the entire Pacific. Gaps existed. Submarines lucky enough to transit through gaps survived. But as American deployment expanded and sonobuoy barriers covered more areas, the gaps narrowed. Luck became increasingly rare. Statistical analysis by Commander Operations Research Group quantified the effectiveness. A Japanese submarine operating in an area with sonobuoy coverage faced 40% probability of detection per day. Over a 10-day patrol, cumulative detection probability exceeded 90%. Over a 20-day patrol, detection approached certainty. The mathematics were inexorable. Admiral Toyota, commanding Combined Fleet, faced an impossible choice. He could order submarines to continue operations, accepting massive losses, or he could withdraw submarines to defensive positions, conceding control of the sea. Either option represented defeat. Japanese submarines, once an offensive weapon capable of strategic effect, had been reduced to defensive remnants incapable of affecting the war's outcome. American intelligence tracked the decline. In January 1945, magic intercepts revealed that only 32 Japanese submarines remained operational. Production had effectively stopped. Training had been curtailed. The submarine force that had attacked Pearl Harbor and threatened Pacific shipping for 3 years was effectively destroyed. The acoustic geometry had proven decisive. Technology, intelligence, and industrial capacity had combined to eliminate the Japanese submarine threat. Western Pacific, February 19, 1945. The war had entered its final phase. American forces controlled the Philippines. B-29 bombers struck Japanese cities. The Navy's blockade strangled Japanese commerce. But approximately 30 Japanese submarines remained operational, and American anti-submarine forces continued hunting them systematically. Submarine I-400, flagship of Japan's submarine aircraft carriers, departed Kure on March 1st for what Japanese command designated Operation Hikari. The mission: attack American forces at Ulithi Atoll using the submarine's 3 Seirin aircraft. Commander Arizumi Tatsunosuke commanded I-400 and 2 sister boats, I-13 and I-14. This would be one of Japan's last submarine operations. But American intelligence knew of the operation before it began. Magic intercepts provided departure dates and general objectives. Admiral Nimitz directed hunter-killer groups to establish barrier patrols covering probable routes from Japan to Ulithi. Escort carriers USS Tulagi and USS Shamrock Bay deployed with their destroyer escorts. Sonobuoy barriers covered thousands of square miles. I-13, the first boat to depart, encountered sonobuoys on March 9th. The submarine was transiting submerged when it triggered detection devices deployed by aircraft from USS Tulagi. The acoustic signature, a large, slow-moving contact, identified I-13 as a major submarine. Destroyers prosecuted the contact through the night. At 0800 on March 10th, I-13 attempted to surface. Aircraft caught the submarine exposed and attacked with rockets and bombs. The boat sank with all hands. I-14 avoided the sonobuoy barriers through careful navigation and luck. The submarine reached Truk on March 18th, but during refueling, American intelligence pinpointed the boat's location. Carrier aircraft from USS Hancock attacked Truk Harbor on March 19th. I-14 was destroyed at anchor by dive bombers. I-400 survived longer through a combination of evasion and Japanese command's decision to cancel Operation Hikari. The submarine returned to Japanese waters without completing its mission. But the operation demonstrated that even Japan's most advanced submarines could not operate effectively against American anti-submarine forces. Throughout March and April, American hunter-killer groups systematically hunted the remaining Japanese submarines. Each detection followed similar patterns. Sonobuoys identified submarine positions. Aircraft vectored surface ships to contacts. Depth charges and acoustic torpedoes completed kills. The geometry of detection allowed no escape. Some encounters revealed desperation. On April 7th, submarine I-8 surfaced near Okinawa and attempted to attack American ships with deck guns, a suicidal tactic showing that the boat's torpedo tubes had been damaged or depleted. Aircraft sank I-8 within minutes. Other submarines simply vanished. Radio transmissions ceased. Boats failed to return to base. Japanese records examined after the war showed that many submarines departed on patrol and were never heard from again. The sonobuoy nets had caught them, but the specific circumstances of their loss remained unknown. By May 1945, operational Japanese submarine strength had declined to approximately 20 boats. Many remained in port, unable to sortie due to mechanical problems, crew shortages, or fuel limitations. The few boats that did sortie faced near-certain detection and destruction. American sonobuoy deployment reached maximum extent in May. Monthly consumption exceeded 18,000 units. Barriers covered all major transit routes around Japan. The acoustic nets had been drawn tight. Any submarine attempting to leave Japanese waters would be detected. The statistics told the story of complete tactical dominance. From January through May 1945, American forces detected 53 Japanese submarine contacts. 41 resulted in successful attacks. 37 submarines were sunk. 4 were damaged severely. The detection rate, 78%, represented near-perfect performance. The kill rate, 70% of detected submarines destroyed, demonstrated that detection led directly to destruction. Japanese submarine commanders understood they were being hunted to extinction. Some boats surrendered when detected rather than face hopeless combat. Others fought to the end, achieving nothing except crew deaths. A few boats remained hidden in ports, waiting for the war to end. Admiral Lockwood reviewed the anti-submarine statistics with satisfaction tempered by respect for the enemy. In a message to Admiral Nimitz dated May 28, he wrote, "Japanese submarine force has been effectively eliminated as a combat factor. Remaining boats pose minimal threat. Sonobuoy detection has proven decisive." The cornering was complete. Japanese submarines, which had once threatened Allied operations across the Pacific, had been hunted down systematically. The acoustic geometry had transformed naval warfare. Technology, when deployed with industrial scale and tactical sophistication, had eliminated an entire category of weapon. The final Japanese submarine sunk by sonobuoy detection was I-351, destroyed on July 14, 1945, while attempting to evacuate personnel from Singapore. Aircraft from USS Anzio detected the submarine using standard sonobuoy barriers. Destroyers sank I-351 with depth charges. The boat survivors testified after the war about the hopelessness they felt when American detection seemed to know their every movement. 3 weeks later, Japan surrendered. The remaining submarines, approximately 15 boats, were seized or scuttled. The submarine force that had begun the war with 178 boats ended with wreckage and defeat. The geometry had proven absolute. Sound had defeated silence. Technology had defeated tactics. Industrial capacity had defeated individual courage. The nets had closed completely. Washington, D.C., September 2, 1945. While Japanese officials signed surrender documents aboard USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, Navy analysts compiled final statistics on anti-submarine operations. The numbers revealed technology's decisive role in victory. Total Japanese submarines lost in the war, 129 boats. Losses to sonobuoy-detected attacks, 67 submarines, 52%. This percentage understated sonobuoy impact because it included only boats directly detected by sonobuoys. Many additional submarines were sunk in areas where sonobuoy barriers had forced them into detection by other means. The operational data showed sonobuoy effectiveness clearly. In 1943, before widespread sonobuoy deployment, American forces detected Japanese submarines at 8% rate. In 1945, with mature sonobuoy tactics, detection rates reached 78%. The technology had multiplied effectiveness tenfold. Production statistics demonstrated American industrial commitment. Total sonobuoy production from 1943 through 1945, 270,000 units. Approximately 140,000 deployed in the Pacific. The remainder used in Atlantic operations, training, and testing. Total production cost, approximately $13 million, less than 2 modern destroyers, yet these devices enabled destruction of submarines worth hundreds of millions. Commander Schoeffel, who had managed sonobuoy logistics, compiled a detailed report on the program. His analysis emphasized 3 factors: technological effectiveness, industrial scale, and tactical innovation. The sonobuoy itself was sophisticated, but manufacturable. Production scaled rapidly to meet operational demands. and tactical doctrine evolved continuously, maximizing technology effectiveness. The report noted that sonobuoys alone had not won the anti-submarine war. Detection required complementary weapons, depth charges, acoustic torpedoes, and coordinated tactics. Intelligence provided crucial information about submarine movements. Training ensured crews used technology effectively, but sonobuoys had been the critical enabler. Without detection, nothing else mattered. Naval historians would later debate whether sonobuoys represented revolutionary or evolutionary technology. The devices used established sonar principles. The innovation was deploying sonar remotely and at scale. But this innovation fundamentally changed naval warfare. Submarines could no longer hide in the ocean's vastness. Acoustic geometry had eliminated their primary advantage. The Japanese perspective, documented in post-war interrogations, revealed enemy recognition of American technological superiority. Vice Admiral Miwa Shigeyoshi, who commanded submarine operations, acknowledged, "We understood American detection improved significantly in 1944. We could not determine the methods or develop countermeasures. Our losses became unsustainable." German submarine commanders, also interrogated after surrender, expressed similar sentiments. Admiral Donitz stated, "The Americans deployed a detection system against which we had no defense. Our boats could not operate without being found. The technology decided the outcome." These acknowledgments from defeated enemies confirmed the strategic assessment. Sonobuoys had not merely increased detection rates, they had fundamentally altered the tactical balance. Submarines, which had been commerce raiders and strategic weapons, became hunted targets. The geometry of detection had inverted the hunter-prey relationship. The broader lesson extended beyond naval warfare. Technology, when properly developed and deployed, could achieve decisive advantage. But technology required supporting systems, production capacity, logistics networks, training programs, and tactical doctrine. America's strength lay not in any single innovation, but in the ability to transform innovation into operational reality at industrial scale. This capability reflected democratic society's advantages. Free markets enabled rapid industrial expansion. Education systems produced engineers and technicians. Political systems responded to military requirements. Workers took pride in production. The combination created capabilities authoritarian regimes could not match. The sonobuoy program exemplified these advantages. Development occurred rapidly because engineers could innovate without bureaucratic constraint. Production scaled because industry could expand freely. Deployment succeeded because tactical commanders received equipment they requested. The system worked because democracy and capitalism enabled effectiveness. By September 1945, sonobuoy technology was being adapted for peacetime uses. Scientists proposed using sonobuoys for oceanographic research, mapping ocean currents and studying marine life. The devices that had hunted submarines would now explore the seas systematically. But the military applications remained primary. The Navy incorporated sonobuoys into standard anti-submarine doctrine. Future conflicts would see continued sonobuoy use. The Cold War would demand even more sophisticated versions. The technology's legacy would extend decades beyond World War II. Admiral King, in his final report as Chief of Naval Operations, assessed the war's lessons. He wrote, "Victory resulted from many factors, but in anti-submarine warfare, technology proved decisive. The sonobuoy system exemplified American advantages in innovation, production, and tactical application. Future naval forces must maintain this technological edge." The statistics supported this conclusion. American losses to submarine attack declined from 1.2 million tons of shipping in 1942 to 300,000 tons in 1945, a 75% reduction. Simultaneously, American submarines sank over 5 million tons of Japanese shipping. The asymmetry demonstrated complete technological and tactical dominance. Japanese submarine force Effectiveness, measured by shipping sunk per submarine per day at sea, declined from 0.8 tons in 1942 to 0.12 tons in 1945, an 85% decrease. The submarines still existed, but the sonobuoy nets had rendered them ineffective. The geometry had achieved its purpose. Technology had cornered an enemy that believed the ocean's vastness provided sanctuary. Industrial capacity had deployed that technology at decisive scale. Tactical innovation had maximized effectiveness. The combination had eliminated the submarine threat. And in Washington, as analysts compiled final reports, they knew this pattern would repeat. Technology would continue advancing. Industrial capacity would continue growing. America's advantages would persist as long as democratic society and free markets remained strong. The sonobuoy nets had closed. The lesson remained. Naval War College, Newport, Rhode Island, October 15, 1945. Rear Admiral Ralph A. Ofstie delivered a lecture on anti-submarine warfare to officers studying post-war naval strategy. His subject, how sonobuoy technology had transformed naval doctrine and what lessons applied to future conflicts. Ofstie began with statistics. Detection rates before sonobuoys, 8%. Detection rates with sonobuoys, 78%. This tenfold improvement represented not just better technology, but a fundamental shift in warfare. Submarines had lost their primary advantage, invisibility. Naval warfare would never be the same. The lecture emphasized three strategic lessons. First, technology could achieve decisive advantage when properly developed and deployed. Sonobuoys were not the most sophisticated weapons of the war. Atomic bombs, radar, and proximity fuses were more technically complex. But sonobuoys had been deployed at scale and used effectively. Sophistication mattered less than application. Second, industrial capacity determined technology's impact. The Western Electric factory in Kansas City had produced 270,000 sonobuoys in 2 years. No other nation could match this production scale. German and Japanese attempts to develop similar devices failed not from lack of knowledge, but from lack of manufacturing capacity. Industrial superiority translated directly to military advantage. Third, tactical innovation multiplied technology's effectiveness. Early sonobuoy operations achieved moderate success. As commanders developed better deployment patterns and operators gained experience, effectiveness increased dramatically. The geometry of detection, staggered arrays, overlapping coverage, systematic barriers, emerged from tactical experimentation. Technology provided tools. Tactics determined outcomes. Admiral Ofstie's lecture became the basis for post-war anti-submarine doctrine. The Navy's Submarine Warfare Division incorporated sonobuoys into standard operating procedures. Future escort carriers and destroyers, and would deploy with sonobuoy equipment as routine armament. The devices that had proven themselves in combat would remain central to naval strategy. But the technology evolved rapidly. By 1946, engineers had developed improved sonobuoys with longer battery life, better sensitivity, and multiple frequency options. By 1948, jet-deployable sonobuoys allowed faster aircraft to conduct anti-submarine operations. By 1950, passive sonobuoys that listened without transmitting active sonar provided even greater stealth. The Korean War would demonstrate continued sonobuoy effectiveness. Although North Korea had no submarine fleet, Soviet submarines operating in Asian waters faced the same acoustic nets that had destroyed Japanese boats. Detection rates remained high. The geometry continued working. The Cold War drove further development. Soviet submarines posed greater challenges than Japanese boats. They operated in Arctic waters where sound propagation differed from tropical Pacific. They used nuclear propulsion that eliminated the need to surface. They carried ballistic missiles that threatened American cities. But sonobuoy technology adapted. deeper diving sonobuoys, cryogenic cooling systems for better sensitivity, and computer processing for signal analysis maintained American detection advantages. The strategic implications extended beyond submarines. The sonobuoy program demonstrated principles applicable to all military technology. Innovation required institutional support. Development demanded resources. Production needed industrial capacity. Deployment required training. Tactics evolved through experience. Success resulted from systematic application of multiple factors working together. These principles shaped post-war American military doctrine. The Department of Defense established research agencies to foster innovation. Defense contracts supported industrial capacity. Training commands developed professional military education. Tactical analysis units studied combat experience. The system that had produced sonobuoy success became the model for developing future weapons. The legacy also included strategic confidence. American military planners knew that technological advantage, industrial capacity, and tactical innovation could overcome enemies with larger forces or geographic advantages. This confidence shaped Cold War strategy. The United States would maintain technological superiority, support it with industrial capacity, and apply it through tactical excellence. The sonobuoy's history also provided cautionary lessons. Technology alone did not guarantee success. Early sonobuoy operations achieved moderate results. Effectiveness required proper deployment, operator training, and tactical doctrine. Future technologies would face similar challenges. Development was necessary but insufficient. Application determined outcomes. Admiral Nimitz, reflecting on the Pacific War in his memoirs, wrote, "Submarine warfare demonstrated the power of technological innovation when combined with industrial might and tactical skill. The sonobuoy system exemplified American advantages. We could develop advanced weapons, produce them at scale, and deploy them effectively. This combination proved decisive. The numbers supported this assessment. Total cost of sonobuoy program, $13 million. Total value of submarines sunk through sonobuoy detection, conservatively estimated at $2 billion in enemy losses. Return on investment, 150 to 1. Few military programs achieved such favorable ratios, but the true return could not be measured in dollars. Japanese submarines sunk by sonobuoys would have attacked Allied shipping, delayed invasions, and prolonged the war. Each submarine eliminated saved merchant ships, protected military convoys, and preserved lives. The strategic value multiplied far beyond direct combat results. By 1950, sonobuoy technology had become routine. Navy patrol aircraft carried the devices as standard equipment. Anti-submarine warfare doctrine assumed sonobuoy availability. The revolutionary technology of 1943 was the established norm of 1950. This transition from innovation to institution represented success. Technologies that work become embedded in organizations. Practices that succeed become doctrine. The sonobuoy had achieved both outcomes. The geometry of sound detection had become fundamental to naval warfare. The lesson remained valid decades later. Technology could achieve decisive advantage. Industrial capacity could deploy technology at scale. Tactical innovation could maximize effectiveness. These principles, proven by sonobuoy success, shaped American military strategy throughout the Cold War and beyond. The nets had closed on Japanese submarines, but they had opened understanding about how democracies could prevail through innovation, production, and application. That understanding became the lasting strategic legacy of the acoustic geometry that cornered an underwater enemy. The war ended with surrender documents and occupation forces. But understanding victory required analyzing how it was achieved. The sonobuoy story provided one answer: technological innovation, industrial capacity, and tactical excellence combined to eliminate enemy capabilities. Japanese submarine force losses totaled 129 boats. American submarines lost 52 boats. The casualty ratio, 2.5 Japanese submarines lost for every American submarine, demonstrated American superiority in submarine warfare from both offensive and defensive perspectives. But the ratio understated American advantages. Japanese submarines accomplished little strategically. They sank relatively few Allied ships. They did not significantly delay American operations. By 1945, they had been rendered irrelevant. Sonobuoys contributed significantly to this outcome. 67 Japanese submarines, more than half of total losses, were sunk in operations where sonobuoys provided detection. Additional submarines were constrained by sonobuoy barriers even when not directly detected. The technology's impact exceeded its direct contribution to kills. The human cost deserved recognition. Japanese submariners served courageously, despite impossible odds. Approximately 11,000 Japanese submarine personnel died in the war. They faced American technology and tactics that gave them minimal survival chance. Their sacrifice reflected their service, even as their cause was unjust. American submariners and anti-submarine forces also paid heavy prices. Approximately 3,600 American submariners died. Surface ship crews and airmen faced dangers from submarines, surface ships, and aircraft. Victory was expensive even for the winning side, but the technological and tactical advantages reduced American casualties significantly. Without sonobuoys, Japanese submarines would have been more effective. More American ships would have been sunk. More sailors would have died. The technology saved lives by ending submarine threat more quickly. This calculation, lives saved through technological superiority, justified the resources invested in sonobuoy development and production. $13 million produced a weapon that shortened the war and reduced casualties. Few expenditures achieved better returns measured in human lives preserved. The sonobuoy program also demonstrated how free societies could mobilize resources effectively. Engineers developed technology. Factories produced it. Military forces deployed it. Each component worked because democratic institutions and free markets enabled effectiveness. Totalitarian regimes like Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan could not match this systematic approach to innovation and production. Post-war analysis by military historians confirmed these conclusions. Studies emphasized that Allied victory resulted from multiple factors: industrial capacity, strategic resources, geographic advantages, intelligence capabilities, and technological innovation. Sonobuoys represented one element within this larger pattern, but they exemplified how the various advantages combined to create decisive superiority. The legacy extended beyond military applications. Sonobuoy technology found civilian uses in oceanography, fishing, and marine research. The devices developed to hunt submarines helped scientists understand ocean dynamics. The military investment produced civilian benefits. This pattern, military technology generating civilian applications, characterized American innovation throughout the war. Radar led to microwave ovens. Jet engines enabled commercial aviation. Computers transformed business and communication. Sonobuoys contributed to marine science. The war accelerated technological development that benefited society broadly. The memorial at Naval War College, Chamotunte, Newport includes a display on anti-submarine warfare. One exhibit shows an AN/CRT-1 sonobuoy recovered from the Atlantic. The device looks unremarkable, a simple cylinder, weathered by saltwater, containing basic hydrophone and radio components. But the accompanying plaque explains this device's role in defeating submarine threats. Visitors studying the exhibit learn that technology's appearance does not reflect its importance. The sonobuoy was not sophisticated by modern standards. But it worked. It was produced at scale. It was deployed effectively. These qualities made it decisive. The final lesson concerned memory and respect. Victory required sacrifice. Technology helped achieve victory at lower cost than alternatives. But people still died, ships still sank, families still grieved. The sonobuoy nets had cornered Japanese submarines efficiently. They had not eliminated war's human cost. Remembering this cost remained important. Technology should be developed to reduce casualties and shorten conflicts. But technology could not eliminate war's fundamental tragedy. Even decisive victory involved loss, grief, and lasting consequences. The sonobuoy story thus balanced two truths. Technology could achieve decisive advantage and save lives. But war remained tragic even when fought effectively. These truths coexisted without contradiction. They represented realistic understanding of how democracies could defend themselves while maintaining respect for all human life, including enemy lives lost in service to unjust causes. 60 years later, in 2005, the Navy decommissioned its last AN/CRT-1 sonobuoys. Modern versions used digital processing, satellite communications, and sophisticated algorithms. But they descended directly from the devices dropped into Atlantic and Pacific waters during World War II. The fundamental concept, acoustic detection deployed at scale, remained unchanged. Veterans who had operated sonobuoys during the war gathered occasionally at reunions. They were elderly men now, sharing memories of long patrols over empty oceans, listening for sounds that meant life or death. They remembered the tension when a sonobuoy detected something, the rush of adrenaline during attacks, the quiet satisfaction when depth charges found their target. They also remembered the war's cost, friends who never returned from patrol, ships that sank before help arrived, enemy submariners who died beneath the waves. Victory had been necessary. But it had not been glorious. It had been deadly work, efficiently executed, achieving essential goals at terrible price. The sonobuoy nets had represented one thread in the larger fabric of victory. American industry produced weapons. American forces deployed them. American democracy sustained the effort. The combination proved decisive against enemies who lacked equivalent advantages. This lesson remained relevant. Technology continued evolving. Threats continued emerging. But the fundamental principle endured. Free societies possessing industrial capacity and technological innovation could defend themselves effectively. The sonobuoy story demonstrated this principle through concrete example. At the Western Electric Plant in Kansas City, long since converted to other production, no monument marked the sonobuoy manufacturing that occurred there. The workers who assembled those devices had moved on to other jobs, retired, or died, but their work had contributed to victory. 270,000 sonobuoys represented 270,000 contributions to defeating tyranny. In archives at the National Archives in College Park, Maryland, records documented the sonobuoy program in detail. Production figures, deployment statistics, tactical reports, kill confirmations. Historians studying these records could reconstruct how technology shaped naval warfare. Students could learn how industrial democracies translated innovation into military advantage. The documents included casualty lists too. Japanese submarines sunk, American ships lost. Names of men who died in the Pacific and Atlantic. The human cost of war, preserved in typewritten lists and fading ink. Technology had made victory more efficient. It had not made victory less expensive in human terms. At the Naval War College, instructors teaching anti-submarine warfare still referenced the sonobuoy success. Modern tactics differed significantly, but the principles remained relevant. Detection enabled attack. Technology multiplied effectiveness. Industrial capacity sustained operations. Tactical innovation maximized results. These lessons, learned through combat experience, continued shaping naval doctrine. The geometry of sound detection that cornered Japanese submarines had evolved into sophisticated modern systems. Satellites tracked submarines from space. Computers processed acoustic data. Unmanned vehicles extended detection ranges. But the fundamental approach, systematic deployment of acoustic sensors in geometric patterns, traced directly to the staggered sonobuoy arrays of 1943. Veterans of that war are nearly gone now. Their direct memories will soon exist only in recordings and written accounts. But the lessons they learned and the victories they achieved remain embedded in institutions, doctrine, and national memory. The sonobuoy nets closed around Japanese submarines 8 decades ago. The understanding they represented, how technology, production, and tactics combined to achieve decisive advantage, remains relevant today. In quiet moments, standing on a beach watching Pacific waves roll toward shore, it is worth remembering what happened beneath those waters. Submarines hunted and were hunted. Men served courageously on both sides. Technology tipped the balance. Democracy's advantages proved decisive. The geometry of sound detection eliminated an underwater threat. The nets had closed completely. The legacy endures. The memory remains. Archives in doctrine, in understanding how free peoples can defend themselves through innovation, production, and determined application of technological advantage. The sonobuoys that cornered Japanese submarines represented more than weapons. They represented what democracies could achieve when threatened. That lesson, earned through sacrifice and proven through victory, remains the enduring inheritance of those who served.